Okay, so I'm going to talk about the creative side of things because that's honestly all I know. So I wanted to think of, how to make this panel the most helpful for everyone here. So I put together a formula for an effective ad, and what does every ad need to have, whether that's a campaign ad for a candidate or an issues-based ad for a PAC. They all need to have these same 4 elements. Number 1, most importantly, you need to tell a story. I don't care what kind of ad it is you're putting out there. There needs to be a story that you're trying to tell. This could be your own personal story as a candidate. This could be the story of your constituents. This could be the story of your opponent. Whatever story you're trying to tell, it should be authentic. Don't try and emulate somebody else. People see through your bullshit. They smell bullshit a mile away. And the instant that they hear a politician talking and not a human person, they don't believe you anymore. So have we given up? I don't know. So you need to be authentic. Talk to your friends and family. What is your voice? And if it's not your personal story, you need to be authentic to the story that you're trying to tell. Tell the truth of that story. And it needs to be memorable. Sorry, it's not true. Okay. So in order to be memorable, you have to be willing to take risks. If you're going to play it safe, no one is going to remember you. You have to be willing to offend people. You're not going to please everybody. It's impossible to please everybody. You need to know who your target audience is so that you're not pissing off the votes you need. But you need to not be afraid to walk that line and try and be so safe that you're not saying anything profound. So take risks. I've taken a lot of risks with all of my ads. They, were not beloved by everyone, but they were shared millions and millions of times. So they were beloved by enough people that they were shared with millions of eyeballs for free. So take risks. The second thing you need to do to be memorable is you need to elicit an emotional response. And you need to know going into it, what is the emotional response I am trying to elicit from my audience? That could be, hope and inspiration. That could be anger, heartbreak. What is it that you want them to feel at the end of your ad? And look back at your ad and say, am I accomplishing that? Are you feeling something at the end of this? Number 3 is to persuade. There it is. Look at our faces. So nice. Aha, that's all of us. Click. Tell a story, be memorable. We're on persuade. You can go to the next slide. Okay. Oh, it got messed up. That's okay. So we're on persuade. Know your audience. Know who you're talking to, because it's not always going to be the same from ad to ad. So you need to know who you're trying to persuade. Are you trying to persuade left-leaning individuals who maybe aren't going to show up to vote in a midterm to get off the couch and come vote for you? Are you trying to persuade, independents and moderates? Or are you trying to do the impossible and persuade your Uncle Larry, MAGA hat wearing Larry, to change sides? And that's much more difficult, and sometimes impossible. Number 2, for the love of God, don't look like a political ad. This up here is whose choice? Doesn't look like a political ad. Down here, even the Canadians do it, you guys. Don't do that. It is the same. We see that ad back to back to back to back. It is the same narrator. It is the same black and white scary photos. That's just, oh, I'm getting political spam, fun. That's just in one ear and out the other. Don't do that. So if you can find a way to not look like a political ad, do that. And number 3 is contrast opposition. Studies have shown that the most effective ads are contrast ads. So that means they're not going to be 100% positive. They're not going to be 100% negative. They're going to show a contrast between you and your opponent, between your side and their side. And if you can do that, you have a much better chance at persuading. And that doesn't mean that all of the ads need to be contrast ads. There is a place for 100% positive, 100% negative ads. But when you're looking at the power of persuasion, we know contrast ads do the best job. And lastly, most importantly and most difficultly, is to mobilize. How do you get people to do the thing you need them to do? You know, what is your call to action? Is it to get up and vote for you? Is it to share this with all of their friends and family? Is it to sign a petition, go to your website? Whatever your call to action is should be clear. And then what is the motivation to get them to do that? Does your ad effectively motivate people to do what you're asking them to do? So how do you do that? You move people. Well, sorry, you guys. You move people. You scream at them. You move people by moving people. So profound. You need to move people emotionally if you want to move them to actionable actions. If you want them to get up off the couch, go to the polls, and vote for you, you need to elicit that emotional response. Because if people feel nothing at the end of your ad, they will do nothing at the end of your ad. The first one says, I really don't know how to feel about this video. It's a lot to take in at one time, so it is something I'm going to remember. It's not exactly a glowing review, but they're going to remember it. So that's important.
You made a Republican think.
I made it.
Let's just say it.
Shocking. The next one is, as a gun owner who believes there's a need for more education and restrictions, I found this to be awakening. Awakening people.
You woke a Republican.
They are woke, Michelle. They are woke. Next. This one says, that was a very powerful commercial that really makes you stop and think. More thinkers, Michelle. Stopping and thinking. Excellent. Who would have thought? It is a powerful video that is very true. Thoughts and prayers are good, but sometimes action needs to be taken to get things done. They are open to the idea of taking action. Of thinking. Amazing. Okay, next. Forgive my language, but holy shit, this needs to be on blast everywhere. Perhaps the most powerful and uncomfortable message I've ever seen on this issue. Very well done. We made people uncomfortable. We took a risk. The next one makes you think about, are we doing enough to stop gun violence? Great question. You got it. You got the point. Good job. And not everyone did get the point. There were comments that were like, I don't get it. Why won't she jump in the water? It's like, good Lord. Those people are unreachable. Okay, that was an incredibly powerful commercial message. Perfect, actually. I just included that one because it called me perfect. I love it. It was moving and emotionally drew me in and touched me. And that is the key. It was emotionally touching. They were touched. They were moved. And that is how you move people to mobilize. You move them. And with that, we are going to start a conversation with Michelle and Winston about how we connect creative talent with campaigns so that we can make better content and we can all, as a Democratic Party, keep putting the best content out there.
They say nothing changes in Texas politics until it does.
Till it does.
Till the Texas power grid failed and our families froze without water and electricity. Until white Texas politicians removed our history from the classroom.
Till they made it legal to buy a gun without a permit and openly carry it.
Till Texas politicians put a $10,000 bounty on anyone who helped a woman get an abortion. Till we were called child abusers for loving and supporting our transgender children. Till Texas school boards banned books by Black and LGBTQ authors.
Till our loved ones died when Texas politicians fought mask and vaccine mandates during the worst pandemic in over 100 years.
We want real change for Texas now. Now, before history repeats itself. And we're ready to fight. We live in suburbs, in big cities, and on farms and ranches. We are mothers. We are mothers. We are the mothers against Greg Abbott. Let's make Texas a safe place where all families can thrive again. We are mothers against Greg Abbott.
That was Michelle's ad, by the way.
I don't know what was going on with that sound.
We're not going to let Donald Trump take our votes. We're not going to let Donald Trump take our voices. This is our state. This is our country. This is our future, and we're going to take it back. What if instead of fighting back, we fight through this, we fight forward, like a boxer moving off the back foot and onto his front foot, going from defense to offense, taking this fight to every county, to every state house district, to every congressional district, to every state in the union. If we have to do that and pick up a majority in the House by any means necessary.
We have an opportunity right here, right now in Texas to take the fight directly to Donald Trump. Fortune favors the bold, the brave, and the badass.
When the powerful few abuse the many, that barefoot rabbi walked into the seat of power and flipped over the tables of injustice. To those who love democracy, who love our neighbors, it's time to start flipping tables.
When you show up, you need to tell them this is who we are as Texans. You tell them we are not going to stand for this bullshit. You tell them that it is we, the people, and not you, the dictator, Mr. Trump.
Do everything that you can, and in 2026, we'll elect Democrats statewide in Texas. And in 2028, we'll say goodbye to Donald Trump and elect a Democrat to the White House. We fight on every front, and we fight until we win. Are you with me?
Inspiring, motivating. So that was Winston's ad. So the first one was Michelle's, and that was the first ad that Mothers put out. And then the second one was Winston's. So I'm going to start with UN. You have over a decade of experience working on the inside of political campaigns. What is the number one thing you'd like to tell campaigns when it comes to hiring creative talent?
Yeah, so, campaign resources are super limited. I think we all know that. Sort of at the very top of that is the time that you have with your principals or candidates. And as you get closer to the election cycle coming to a close, like that time and resource dwindles significantly. The people that you want around you when you're running campaigns and offices and PACs, they need to be able to do a lot. So when you're specifically thinking about comms staffers, you want somebody who does good social media, who can catch clips that can be turned into ads later. You want somebody comfortable enough with, cell phone photos and social media platforms. Like, you want somebody who can do a lot of things. I gotta give a shout out to the AV guys that helped us with the projection issue. In the moment when you're running media projects, stuff happens, and so you really want to prioritize having people around you who can think quickly on their feet, think creatively, and like always be capturing the right stuff for your cause. So when it comes to that, like prioritizing good staffers that are very flexible, creative, and super dependable in a pinch, like they make the best content on the ground. Not everybody is going to be able to afford a production company like us or some consultant from another state. And so in a lot of cases all over the state of Texas, and I'm sure you all represent this as well, you have to make do with what you have access to in terms of people. And in terms of media, it's really about giving a shot to somebody who you think shows promise in all of these things, who can think quickly on their feet, and who you can coach to like represent you in the digital space. The two ads that you saw between the two of us are very different, right? One is a very conceptual ad, and then the other shows people what happens at the campaign level, what it looks like for your candidate, your organization to be doing something in the community. And those two things go hand in hand. But in terms of your internal team, you want somebody who's going to be able to show the momentum that you've got on the ground with your volunteers. Donors are going to see that locally. So it's very important to prioritize somebody who can catch that media for you and put a very polished narrative out there in the digital world.
Thank you. Michelle, as an indie filmmaker, I want you to discuss what brought you into the political arena and how you drug me with you.
Okay. Well, I guess the thing that brought me into the political arena was Trump being elected president. Because before that, I mean, obviously I was political in the sense of I voted, not always in every election, but in the major ones. But I wouldn't consider myself a political like activist by any measure. I mean, I was an activist for some things, but not like politics. But in 2016, all that changed. And then of course, voting, got involved some organizations and some friends and stuff. But really the thing that compelled me to take action, real action, was January 6th. So as I was sitting there watching the horrors of that day unfold on CNN, I was thinking, I can't just vote. I can't just get on social media every day and bitch about Trump. I've got to do something. But who am I? I'm just one person, and I'm just what can I do? Well, I'm a storyteller. I'm a filmmaker. I don't normally make commercials. I make Lifetime movies. I make indie films. I make, those kinds of things. But I also felt like that so what I did on January 7th was I shot an email out to every filmmaker in Texas that I knew, and I know a lot. And I had about 40 responses. I basically said, we've got to do something. Why don't we put our collective talents together? There were filmmakers from Dallas, Austin, Corpus, all over the state of Texas. And I said, why don't we put our collective, talents together and come up with some ads or do something, to try to flip Texas blue. That was the goal. We got to flip Texas blue. And so this wasn't my really first foray into, it was my first foray into ads. But prior to that, I had done a 6-part docuseries for Amazon where I followed a congressional candidate on the campaign trail called Dana Steele Rocks the 36th. And so through that process, I had gotten sort of more involved in the political world as a storyteller, but on the documentary side. But this was a whole new thing. And so Chelsea was one of the people that I reached out to, as well as some of the others who've directed ads. And so, but at that point in time, it was like I said, it was like January of 2021. There wasn't going to be another major election until 2022. So I was worried that if we made ads then, that people would have forgotten them by 2020 when the election happened, right? So I think we all kind of collectively decided to, put the project on the back burner until 2022. And there was also the issue of funding, because one of the things that I ran into with the docuseries was, if I'm making political content, especially that has a specific, where we're advocating for specific maybe candidates or something, and I'm paying for that, I could potentially violate campaign finance laws, right? So with the docuseries where we're following a congressional candidate, I had to get a letter from an attorney here in Austin named Ross Fisher, that basically he gave me a legal opinion letter that said that my documentary was for educational purposes, because it was. The whole point of me doing the documentary was to find out what it took in the year 2018 to run for Congress. Like, what does that look like? And so I was able to get that letter. But with the ads, that was a whole other thing, and I knew we were going to have to partner with a PAC to get these things funded. And it just so happened that a friend of mine invited me to follow the Mothers Against Greg Abbott page, Facebook page, and by that time, Nancy had already accumulated probably about 20,000, I think, followers on that page, the Facebook page, and so I became one of them. And I think it was very serendipitous. It was very organic how it happened. I think within like a week or two of me joining this page, Nancy posts, "I'm looking for filmmakers who might be interested in working with me to create ads," and I'm like, I have 40 of them waiting and ready to do that right now. Let's do it. So we got on a call and we started pitching ideas. And so this ad, the one that the Nothing Changes, Nancy actually wrote the original version of that and sent it to me along with another one. And I felt like that one was the one that was the most, we had no money, we had no budget, that I could probably shoot easily and more feasibly with the lack of budget that we had. And so I basically took her, her script and put it into screenplay format, something that was filmable, added locations, added, those kinds of things. And then I got my friend Elizabeth Aveyan, who's she is a producer here in Texas, but lives here in Austin. She's co-owns Troublemaker Studios. And she's a good friend of mine, and she produced the ad. I directed it, and then I think they premiered it. Tell me if I'm wrong on this, Nancy. I think they premiered it at the Texas Democratic Convention that year in 22, and I wasn't there, but I was told that it got 2 standing ovations. 3. And then the next thing I knew, it was online, and it's like, it just took off. I mean, just went crazy viral. So I think it was the first ad that we did that went viral. And the cool thing about that was now Nancy's getting calls from CNN and MSNBC and all these, because this ad's gone viral, right? And so she's starting to get these requests for interviews. And I think it was MSNBC. I'm not 100% sure about that, who said, "Do you have another ad that maybe we could premiere during your interview?" And the one that we had finished that we could, premiere was Chelsea's ad, "Whose Choice," which if you haven't seen that one, then okay.
These ads were paid for by a lot of elbow grease. All of those Mothers Against Greg Abbott yard signs. My husband, my children, and I packed every single one of those signs, and we sold them, and all of the profit from those signs went into
Yep. Yep, that's right. Yep. And like I said, that was vital because we could not personally pay for these without potentially running into campaign finance issues, right? So we needed to partner with a PAC to be able to legally do this. And so it just worked out. When I first spoke to Nancy, I said, we need to find a PAC that will help, back these. And she's like, "Well, I'm creating a Mothers Against Greg Abbott PAC." I'm like, perfect. So it was very serendipitous. Then it worked out very, organically. But honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. I'd never made a political ad in my life. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But we just did it. And we are storytellers. We're natural storytellers. So we just told stories.
So that brings me to, how, and this is a question for both of you to touch on. How do you think campaigns, especially small ones with minuscule budgets, can find talent in unconventional ways? Because you and I had never really thought about getting into the political arena, and it was, like you said, serendipitous that we were able to do this, and I'm very grateful for Nancy for allowing me to tell these stories, because I could think them up all day long, but without funding to shoot them, they're just in my brain. So how can campaigns, far and wide, in little rural towns to big cities, what are some creative ways that they can find local talent to be part of their creative teams to tell these stories that, otherwise a campaign may not be able to afford to have a highly produced ad like that?
I'll let you take this.
Yeah, so one of the things that we were discussing before this panel is, in a town like Austin, it's very easy to find creatives, but all of you may not have access to the big sort of market of, creative folks. My easy recommendation for you is, get somebody who lives on TikTok, and often that's going to be your younger folks, right? Your own children, folks who volunteer, who are young, out of high school, people who show interest in having a voice in the political process. Trust them with the media as well. The thing that we want to do as a statewide team is build the bench of creative talent in your local communities that have the experience through the campaigns and through working with your local clubs to be able to kind of advance their own skills in telling the stories of politics. Like I said, there's a very deep bench in a lot of the metro areas for folks who are caught up on politics, but there is no better ambassador for your local areas than folks who intimately know what it's like on a day-to-day basis through their families and through their community, actions and stuff, that are going to be able to tell those stories effectively. So the thing that you're doing in sort of finding creative talent, it's not just about one campaign, right? It is about developing voices of the next generation so that they can go and effectively communicate political topics all over the state of Texas. All of us know that Texas is not the same from one end to the other. It is, several major regions that all have, different community history and different traditions and stuff. And the best thing that you could be doing is trying to identify who those people are so that when your campaign is over, you can make a recommendation on somebody who showed a lot of promise and they can continue to sort of build the local infrastructure. This is very much a long-term hire. So I'd certainly recommend look for people who have a lot of familiarity with the social media platforms, trust them, give them the opportunity to prove themselves and learn, and then you make a much more lasting contribution to everybody who comes after you.
Thank you. Sorry, my kids are with Grammy, so I need to check in with that. Okay. Michelle, do you want to touch on that? Any creative thoughts you have on finding talent in local communities?
Well, yeah, my background, before I was a professional writer, producer, director, I worked for a nonprofit organization in Houston called Southwest Alternate Media Project. And it's all about, cultivating local talent and local storytellers. So, I always encourage, find those nonprofit organizations that media organizations, here in Austin, you have Austin Film Society, as well as other ones. Even the small towns are having film festivals now. Go to those film festivals and meet the filmmakers who are local, who are interested in, who align with you politically. If you could, figure that out. And but generally speaking, just be online. He's totally right about this TikTok generation. If I were doing things all over, I would say, let's go make some TikTok videos. And are y'all familiar with the We Do Not Care Club? That's on, right? Obviously, we all know that, right? So guys are like, huh? But we know. And it doesn't take, storytelling takes all forms. She's telling a story with every video she does, right? About her experience as a woman who's perimenopausal or menopausal, right? And it connects with, it's connected with tens of millions of women worldwide, so it could just be that simple, just getting on TikTok and, speaking your truth. And suddenly you're resonating with all of these women globally or people globally. Like there's don't think in the box is what I'm saying. Is like when we were talking about pitching ideas and coming up with ways to create our ad, we were very intentional that we did not want to be another Lincoln Project because we already had a Lincoln Project. They were doing a great job doing their style of video. We didn't want to replicate that. We didn't want to do traditional, political ads because there are people already doing that. And I personally find those, not as engaging, we're storytellers. We wanted to tell stories our way. And it wasn't the traditional way, but it was a way that we felt would be the most emotionally impactful. And let's just say it, we entertain people. And when you can get people to laugh, I mean, we had people, she did an ad about a couple experienced ectopic pregnancy in the most devastating moment, and we're laughing. Think about that for a second. It connected with people because when you can make people laugh or you can make them feel something, then you've got their attention.
Things happen in politics. They happen in the news. News gets broken about a scandal. There's a horrific tragedy. There are things that, as a campaign, are certainly unplanned moments that you need to be ready to respond to. And often the most effective way is to put together something that showcases your feelings on something, followed up by a solution. But that has to come quickly. I mean, there's kind of two separate buckets of political media. One is something that has sort of a longer production time. And then there's stuff that you've got to be able to act on and produce and get out within 2 or 3 days time. You got to move quick on that stuff. A lot of that goes back to the people that you bring in around your campaign infrastructure, your interns, your comms director. Like I said, you want to be looking for somebody who is going to be able to do a lot of things effectively and be flexible and adaptable to the moment, and who can be trusted to put something good out that you're not going to catch flack for afterwards. So a lot of it goes back to the decisions that you make on your personnel is so critically important. Our firm, like I said, we've got about a dozen people, 2 of whom are in the room right now. But these folks have been working around politics so much with photo and video and live events that, we are often folks who get approached by campaigns when stuff like that happens. Somebody announces they're running for higher office. That sets off a trickle effect of everybody announcing to get ahead of the fundraising. Having folks that you can call to be able to, act quickly, come up with a concept, schedule things, sort of manage your volunteers that are going to be featured in something, having folks that, can move fast through that process is critically important.
So the way that we approach it is definitely not rapid, essentially. And we had to get locations. We filmed. We had, like I said, this was the first ad, so we had very little money to work with, and a lot of we did pay people, the crew we were paid and all of that. But the women in that ad are real moms. They're not actors. They volunteered their time. I volunteered my time. Elizabeth, so because we were passionate about this, So when you're passionate about something, you're willing to take those risks and get that story told, right? The locations were, I think, all the locations, if I remember correctly, were donated. The ranch was donated. It was a Mothers Against Greg Abbott member or a friend of a Mothers Against Greg Abbott member. The school was Alamo Draft House headquarters. Can we borrow your school for a shoot for Mothers Against Greg Abbott? He's like, be my guest. So, so it was you just use whatever resources you have available to you. And that sometimes takes time. That's not something you could do right now. Use the resources you have available to you. I mean, right now you can make an ad with this. You don't need to have big fancy equipment with, professional cinematographers and all of the various things. This right here will do the job, but the most important thing you have to have isn't the technology. You have to have the voice. You have to have a voice. and you have to know who your audience is and what you're trying to say, and you have to communicate that message in a way that engages that audience.
And so I know a lot of people say, well, the voter is 18 plus. No, I'm looking for your core audience. I'm looking for the people most likely are going to vote, because running ads is extremely expensive. And so, and for you to run a campaign during a campaign period, like, I think like the general election is 60 days and the primary is 45 days. You have short window and you need to get your voice out and you need to be heard. So that's one thing that we do. We pull, I think of this one, I pulled Marshall Marketing, there's Scarborough. And what they do is like they poll people and they spend a lot of money and time. And this is for every industry. They'll find out, who plans to buy a car, what kind of car. They will say like, who are your voters, who votes in the primary elections, who votes in the general elections. There's so much data out there. And it's really important so that we're not guessing. We can hone down to who your target audience is. And we can eliminate waste in your ad spend. On the next one is going to be the importance or the key components of a marketing plan. So what is the objective? Of course, it's winning the election. But there's a lot of considerations like how competitive is the race? How popular and experienced is your opponent? And the ability to raise funds. Does your opponent have an arsenal of cash on hand, etc.? So I think I mentioned the timing, the primary election. We have political windows in media, and that's 45 days for the primary, and the general election is 60 days, where you can buy political ads. So I always make sure in all the plans that the week of early voting and the election day, that those are the critical days that I have to cover. And then if they have more budget, we start ahead. So identifying the target audience. And so this information is like, we also need to define your geographic area. Some are statewide races, you have school board elections. It all depends. And then determining the media mix. So like there's TV, streaming, radio, outdoor. I'm just looking like takeover pages, banner takeover pages. There's so many different components that we could put in a plan. And it really depends on your budget and about how competitive your race is. So targeted ad buying. So so here again, I'm talking about who is your core voters. And so further down, I'm going to show you a plan that I wrote for Mothers Against Greg Abbott. I had the pleasure of actually running ads for these wonderful film, ads that we saw that these ladies produced. That we ran during the Greg Abbott 2022 against Beto. The common mistake that I find, for a lot of companies is, they'll buy ads like, to run against their own voters. And I'm like, don't spend your money, reaching Democrats. I want you to really focus on independents and soft Republicans. And so a lot of times you see them running ads on CNN and places where you're going to get that vote anyway. I think you should have a small presence, but the concentration needs to be where you can get the swing votes. And then, recently, it's like there's big findings that there's more registered Democrats in Texas than Republicans. So I think there's a messaging issue going on. So, finding the message that resonates to those voters is really important. Okay, the next one says true or false. And this is like in the political arena, like on media buying. They have this, all the broadcast stations say they have, they'll offer the candidates the lowest unit rate. Is it true or false? They do. But what they don't tell you, those are preemptible ads. What does that mean? It means anyone can outbid you. And they do, and they won't let you know until after the election. That doesn't save you any money. You need to, your ads need to be seen and heard. And so they have multiple rate cards. And so like, here I am, it's like a media planner. I know when to use what level of rate card depending on, the timing in the election, because these ads need to run, like you may have a different level where it's lower and then it's going to move up the closer you get to the date of the election. says utilizing your market plan to know, and that's what I'm talking about, like when to use the lower rates and the higher rates. And I'm going to tell you, this is probably not a secret anymore, but the broadcast, usually political rates are 2 to 3 times the normal rate. So, we look at when is the general election, it is fourth quarter. And during that time, that's when retail is running ads at the highest level. It's like, so they already have their buys in place, and then the politicals come. They start preempting their regular clients, and the rates go up, up, and up. So it's really important, that you have pre-planning, that you're locking in as soon as you can. And then they do offer rates that cannot be preemptible, but those are going to be two to 3 times higher than the normal rate. Budget considerations, having a budget goal. I tell every campaign, every client, they have to have a budget goal. And I know a lot of them are fundraising, but we have to have a goal to begin to build a plan. And I also do a comparison with a competitor's budget. It's really important because you can't have a competitor running way over you, and then because we all know it's a popularity contest for a lot of voters who don't take the time to do the research. And so it's really important to make sure that, going into the race, what is that budget level? And then having a contingency plan. I don't know how many times I'm, running a campaign and, it's like a week before the election and they'll get a large amount of money. I always have a plan for it because you need to have the assets. All political ads are prepaid and they require you to fill out a lot of forms. And so you have to act quickly. So we always have a contingency plan so that we know what to expect, because it more often than not, it comes, and then you can actually, put those ads out for you. Okay, so this is the sample plan for Mothers Against Greg Abbott for the TV campaign. So our target demo was women 25 plus, and we had secondary adults 18 plus. Seasonality, we started October 17th through the 8th. We're in the major markets, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston, and then we said Texas markets. The creative, we said 60s and 30s, but we ended up with only 30s because of the budget. 60s are double the cost. So we recommended a multi-video campaign. So they basically ran on broadcast in the major markets, and we ran them on streaming. Next page is going to tell you a little more research. It's going to tell me, this is Marshall Marketing, and I'm looking at it, and they're telling me what's the most influential media. So if you can look at it like, watching television is number 1, and it goes all the way down to reading newspaper. Nobody does that anymore. That only had 12%. So we look at this one was the media consumption. The next one is most influential. We look at all the data when we create a plan because I want to not waste anybody's money. I want to target the most people who are going to vote with the ad. And so I think it's like on the next slide, it's like streaming TV is a digital property. So they have a way more targeting capabilities than linear television. So they, demographic, income, education, behavior, interest, all of this, lifestyle, even political affiliation, because it is a digital property. We could target state, DMA, county to the zip code. On linear, you're limited. So this is like broadcast, CBS, ABC, your top stations. Those we call linear. And they are what we call in demographic market area. So like in San Antonio, it would include, San Antonio is a demographic area, but it includes the 22 counties around it. Every market's like that. So they have high reach. And so when you're buying streaming, you have to take in consideration how much you're going to buy to get that kind of reach. How are you going to get those many type of voters? But it also provides a lot of data. So they overlay it, like you can get credit score, you can get, who bought a car in the last year and stuff like that. Because streaming is digital. There is a lot of targeting and a lot of reporting capabilities. There, it says campaigns, we can get them up very quickly within 12 hours of receiving creative. There's frequency caps, but I think on politicals, you would probably want to expand that. And you can start, stop, day part, heavy up. You can run multiple creative. It's very easy. Streaming is very easy to run. So here's the summary of what we actually did run for Mothers Against Greg Abbott. So we ran 138 ads across Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, Galveston, San Antonio, on ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox Station, not Fox News. And we also ran some Spanish in the Rio Grande Valley. There's, here's the videos that these people produce. Whose choice, no changes. So, and then Spanish ads as well. We wanted to run on the broadcast so we can get broad reach. But on the next page, we're going to show what we ran on streaming. So on streaming, we're in the major markets with Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and the entire state of Texas. So we had delegated, the women 25 plus got 80% of the budget, and then 18 plus only got 20. Hulu and other top, like AMC, Discover Networks, and stuff like that. Hulu is owned by Disney, and they love the ads. They did a really good job. We ran over 1,280,000 impressions during that time. And something that never happens in political, they actually loved Nancy's video so much that we received a bonus. They don't ever bonus, but they gave us like 30,000 bonus impressions. So they were very complimentary. Everybody loved the ads, and I thought that was great. And I thought the results did really, really well. So again, the creative, we ran whose choice, no choice, nothing changes, AB numbers, Wednesday child, to all these videos that you can see on Mothers Against Greg Abbott's website. We ran a majority of them. A lot of them, of course, we had to edit down because they're longer in length. Broadcasts only accept 30 seconds, or 15. And of course, I wanted the 30 seconds, as long as we can get them. And that was it. We uploaded them to the stations, and everything ran as ordered. So do y'all have any questions about that? Because I know, I'm a media marketing nerd, and so I know a lot of this is, not sexy and fun like the creative portion.
Any questions?
Sandra, I thought it was super sexy, by the way.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple things. I've been to a lot of conventions this year with political consultants. So OTT ads, like the streaming channels like YouTube, those are going to be the most popular channels where you should be spending your money, all of the streaming channels, because not too many people are really watching television anymore. It's like that television is just one type of audience. It's a lot of older people. And so if you really want to reach a younger segment, you're going to have to go to a streaming channel. So we're looking at Hulu, Netflix, YouTube, and a lot of these channels, they also have deadlines for political channels when you have to have all your content approved by. So there's some of them that do enforce deadlines, I think Facebook does, but YouTube doesn't. And so you have to be aware of those types of deadlines. And it's better to plan your ad buys ahead than to do it behind. The other thing that I want to tell you is that when Republicans run, I heard, okay, I'm going to listen to Dave Carney in a couple days because he's coming to Austin. Well, he's not coming to Austin. He lives around the area. But anyway, so Dave Carney is going to be speaking here in Austin. And, or is it Dave Carney or Drew Carney? Dave Carney. Drew Carney's the other guy, the actor. Okay, Dave Carney's coming to Austin. He is, he's Greg Abbott's campaign manager, okay? And he likes to run his mouth, okay? So I'm just going to tell you.
Is that the guy that we met at the Polly's?
No.
That you were in the elevator with?
No, that was not the Polly's. That was Greg Abbott's assistant campaign manager.
Oh, okay.
And he was at the Polly's, and we almost shared a cab, and it was, I don't know. I'm glad we didn't. It was going to be tense. Anyway, so I was saved that day. But anyway, so Drew Carney is very open about telling everybody what their media strategies are. He's very open about it. When Republicans buy Latino radio and they start campaigning a lot early, they do not focus on the voters that they know are going to turn out. They focus on the ones they know are not. Okay, so that is the difference. The difference is we tend to focus on those that we know are not last, and they tend to focus on them first, which is why they're winning. And they're also focusing and investing a lot in Spanish radio, and they're doing it early. The earlier, the better. I think if we really want to have a really good opportunity to flip some seats this year, and I think we're going to have to run Spanish ads as early as February, if not next month. And that is not a joke. We have to, one of the things that we have to do is we have to really be careful because Greg Abbott's team and the Republicans are very, very good about branding Democrats. And okay, so they branded us in so many different ways. I don't even want to go through those crass words that they say, but we can already see how they're testing the ground on how to brand Democrats for this next election cycle. They're using Green New Scam. They're going to be going after the environment. They're going to say we're trying to get rid of the oil industry. They're going to say we're trying to get rid of farmers. They're going to say we're not for the working class. So we really have to come out strong and be for farmers and for the working class, and we need to say it loudly and repeat the same message over and over and over again and beat it into the ground. Because if we don't, we're going to allow the Republicans to define us, and we need to define them and repeat the messages about them about 1 million times a day. Because it is time for them to be defined by us and our messaging versus the other way around.
I agree. And guys, you have a moment right now where she's right about the farmers. Like, farmers are hurting, and right now would be a good time to go get a farmer to do an ad for you and say, I voted for Trump, and then he got rid of USAID, and my crops I made all this money from USAID, and he abolished USAID funding, and so I lost all this money. Or the tariffs, whatever it is, like talk to people who voted for him who are disappointed, because that's the message that's going to resonate, I think, across the aisle with Republicans, is that, his policies, his actual, they've always been saying, oh, it's his policies. It's not him. We don't like him. It's his policies. Well, his policies are now hurting his own party, people who voted for him. And that should be, I feel like Democrats should be, seizing that moment.
Economics is going to be key to this next election cycle. And so that is why, like Mothers Against Greg Abbott, we're going to be focused on the economic tabletop kitchen table issues this next election cycle. So if you want to work with us, that's our focus. And this is because I'm telling you, Drew Carney runs his mouth. When I say he runs his mouth, he tells you what his plans are, but you have to read in between the lines. In March, all of the Republicans were at this convention gathering, and they were so proud of themselves. They were like proud roosters, just with their feathers sticking out. They were just so happy and gleeful. And the Democrats were so bummed out, no one was talking. Nobody was talking. But then Drew Carney goes up there and says, hey, the Democrats let themselves be defined by us, and we beat them on the cost of eggs. But if the economy goes through the tanker, we are going to lose this next election cycle. And he knows that he's going to lose it based on the economy. So every time he runs his mouth on Twitter, he'll say something about whatever, and I'll say, yeah, you won on eggs, you're going to lose on tomatoes. Game on, motherfucker. I'm done. Because that is seriously the truth. And that is what we have to come to the plate on. We have to be able to fight back. We have to take the economy and issues for everyday Americans back, and we have to own it. And when I'm not lying to you guys, we have to pick a message and repeat it every single day, several times a day. That it needs to be our mission as Democrats. We all need to, again, just shut up and get in line. The Republicans do it so well. I don't care about your 5,000 opinions. Just shut up and get in line, and we're going to say messages about the economy, because we're going to win this next cycle.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, now I'm all done.
Do we have a second for
Yeah.
a couple questions here?
Yeah, my question just was like, for those that are in the primaries and they're they don't have a big budget, obviously, right now. I don't have anybody running in my primary with me just yet. So should I focus more on those funds when I get them for the general election? Like, because I do social media myself, I know how to do storytelling. I worked with Jolt Action as well, doing my own storytelling. So, like, should I just be, doing selfie mode in the car?
I would
like,
say yes. Until you have someone you're running against, save that money and because there's so much that you can do for free.
Right.
Don't sit on the sidelines and wait to get your message out. Get your message out. Keep talking about it, but save your dollars until you have someone you're running against.
okay.
And recently I've been working on some local campaigns in San Antonio as a volunteer, and most of them want it to they ask you to telephone and to block walk, and I'm like, no. So what I said is why don't we just go to networking events? Why don't we go to farmers markets?
Mm-hmm.
So I went to networking events, and I can give out 1,000 brochures in an hour. Because I felt like when I would go block walk with them, nobody answered the door because they think you're a religious Jehovah Witness. And the phone calls, if you don't recognize the number, you think you're a telemarketer. So I think it's go to network events.
Yeah.
Those are really effective, But I am going to go through streaming in detail tomorrow with Nancy. So we're going to talk about outdoor radio and the streaming, because not all streaming accepts politicals, Netflix does not, Amazon does not. But there's a lot that do, and I'll talk more in depth about the limitations and how to buy it. So if you have more questions, you can see it tomorrow.
I just, from my making the documentary following Dana, the thing that I thought she did really well throughout her campaign, because she did actually have a primary challenger. But what she did really well is, we all know that all these districts, are gerrymandered to the, nines, right? It's just crazy. She got herself bought a truck, had a wrap, one of these wrap jobs done, that says "We the People" on the slide with "Vote Dana Steele," the whole thing. She drove that thing all over that district. All the way from, she lived in the NASA area. She drove it all the way to Woodville, where her opponent was from, and into his backyard and all these various places. She held town halls and she talked to the people, and she got out there and just connected with the voters, because she was a former radio DJ and a very popular one in Houston, and people remembered her, and they're just like, oh, this is so cool. I get to meet Dana Steele. I used to listen to you on Rock 101 KLOL. They just wanted to meet her, just be like, oh, I listened to you when I was growing up. But then she was able to connect. So, you don't have to be a former radio DJ to connect with people. Get out there, drive. Beto did that. It really does make a difference. Even though he didn't win and she didn't win, it still makes a difference. And people remember that. And they appreciate that you tried, that you came out and you talked to them. And honestly, Democrats need to not be afraid to get out and talk to Republicans on their territory. And
100%.
because they're demonizing you online, it's harder to demonize you when you're in front of them, shaking their hand and being friendly.
Let's get a round of applause to the film team. Thank you.